If you've ever looked at a small piece of land and wondered, could I actually make this work? This episode is for you. Today on Dawn's Dirt, I'm sitting down with Jared from Reuben's Roots Market Garden in northern Saskatchewan. This is one of those conversations that every small grower, side hustle farmer, or I'm just getting started person needs to hear. Jared didn't start with acres and acres. He started with a quarter-acre garden. Today, he runs a profitable market garden while holding down a full-time job. And we get real about what it actually takes. We talk about work ethic, grit, and discipline, and how you build a farm business without burning yourself into the ground. We break down the best crops for small-scale success: carrots, beans, beets, peas, why they work, and how they sell, and how to think about them as a business, not just plants in the ground. We also dig into systems, how to use employee time wisely, where people waste the most time and money, and how knowing your strengths and weaknesses can make or break your farm. And yes, we go there. Organic versus non-organic, why some farmers choose certification and why others don't, and how to make that decision honestly based on your land, your market, and your goals, not pressure or trends. At the heart of it, Jared is just a solid farmer who wanted to grow good food and sell it well, and built something sustainable step by step. If you're growing on the side, thinking about scaling, or wondering if a small plot can actually turn into something real, you're going to want to listen to this full episode. If you enjoy conversations like this, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and share this podcast out. It's how we keep these real farmer stories alive. All right, let's get into it. So, welcome here. Thanks for being here.
Yes.
So can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, my name's Jared. I am I would say, an average person, but I have an interest in agriculture. I grew up on a farm. I worked in the industry for 10 years as a sales rep. And I've always enjoyed gardening. I like especially the freshness of the produce coming from there versus the store. And I'm quite good at it. So I had an opportunity here a couple of years ago to start a market garden, and I just kind of went with it. It was March actually when I found the opportunity, so I had no time to plan and a lot of work to prep the ground, and just kind of dove in feet first, head first, however, and here I am, finished up my third year and planning expansion for my fourth.
I love it. I love it. So where in the world are you?
I am located just outside, my garden is just outside the Battlefords in Saskatchewan. I live in North Battleford, so it's around
Okay.
here, it's not very common to see this. There's people doing it as a hobby, just selling extra from their garden, but nothing to the scale that I'm doing in this area. But I know you can find them
I
everywhere,
love
right?
it. Yeah, I love it. Okay, so you go to a farmer's market. So you grew. How big was your first garden? And did you plant right into the sod?
No, it was left to weeds for, I don't know, 6 years before it was last used for anything for production. And there was drip tapes buried underneath there, so I had a lot of work. Tilled it up, just kind of by the seat of my pants, figured out and planted some rows, and did terrible in my first year. I spent twice as much as I made, but I learned a lot. So it was definitely a very good learning experience first year. Turned around, applied what I learned, bought some better tools, had way better success in my second year.
Tell me about your first year. So you said you spent more than you made and you had to dig it all up. It was a garden. Like, how big was it? And then what went wrong? What didn't go well the first year?
I think what didn't go well the first year was recognizing the amount of weed seed bank that there was. It was weeds took over. I just couldn't keep up. And then learning irrigation, like, that was a big something I'd never dealt with in my life. So learning how to to keep up on that. And then also I would say like just planning out when to have production, things like that. Those are the things that I would say made year one not as successful as I would have hoped. Um, and a big part of year one was I didn't know the market, especially I started planning like mid March and was planting 6 weeks later, right? I had no time to really research the market, understand what people wanted. So I planted a variety of things. I would say of all the ground that got planted, which was about a quarter acre, maybe not quite, I had probably only about 30% of it was what made my income. I had lots of cauliflower and
Okay.
broccoli and things like that that just didn't perform well enough and also weren't demanded at the market. So,
Okay. What was demanded? So you went to the farmers market, first farmers market you've probably ever been to, and what was that experience like? And what were people buying?
so I don't actually sell at a farmer's market. We have here, it's an open market store. And so it's kind of like a consignment store for local vendors. There's everything there from people roasting their own coffee, making soaps. There's wild game meat being sold there. There's like you name it, you can probably find it there. Handmade things, and of course in the summer people growing vegetables. So that's kind of a convenient thing for me, the market. But what I found sold was carrots would have, but I didn't have good carrot production in my first year. But beans, green and yellow beans sold like crazy. So did peas. People love fresh peas. And corn did as well, but corn, I don't produce corn anymore. It's a bit challenging with pest issues. So,
Mhm. What happened with your pests?
well, had corn borer worm come in and pretty much destroy everything. The first year was good. I had three different varieties, and they focused on two of the varieties that didn't produce as much yield, and then the one variety that produced nice cobs, they didn't seem to touch it as much. So whether it was a timing thing or the season kind of helped me out with when the pest pressure came, it's hard to say. But I tried it again in my second year, and they completely destroyed my crop. I had, I forget, it was 6 beds, 100 feet long of corn, so it would have been like a dozen rows of corn, and I think I made $40. Like I sold maybe 40 cobs of corn off of that.
Mm.
It was brutal. So, and it was a lot of work, like
Yeah.
cleaning up all that trash at the end of the year to bed prep for the next year wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. You know how I used to do it? So I'd plant like an acre or two of corn, and we used to actually take like a bush lawnmower, and we would mow it because corn are nutrient suckers. So it suck all the nutrients out. And then you've got all your nutrients sucked from the soil in the plant. And then we were like, well, we don't want to waste these nutrients. So we would like chop it all up really fine and then just blow it all back on the garden and put it all back in as, green manure really. And but I never struggled really with those corn borer. Like I didn't. That wasn't something that, and I think it's because I was further south. I'm not sure, but yeah. Thankfully, I
I
didn't struggle with that one.
I think that one it can be a big timing thing. It can be a varietal thing. It can be a seasonal thing, like one year to the next, just depending on, how insects are, right? You've been in agriculture. One year could be terrible and the next year could not be a problem at all. So,
For sure. So you were an agrologist or an agronomist. Like, what were you before this? So you were a farm kid,
yeah.
and farm kids have great work ethic. And then you wanted to get into agriculture. So then, like, so you were selling chemical seed. What were you doing in agriculture in between there?
So I went to Lakeland College in Vermilion, took the crop tech program there, and out of school went straight into managing a retail was Viterra at the time, and then stayed with the name changes. At the end of my time in that part of the industry, I was still managing a retail and essentially looking after majority of sales because I had young, like relatively inexperienced staff. So, but basically looked after retail and provided every aspect of the service and the business that comes with that. So I was a certified crop advisor, held that designation for I think about 7 years, and worked with farmers directly, planned inventory forecasts, everything to ensure that our customer base was looked after.
For sure. I love that. And so now how are you taking those things that you've learned, those life lessons you learned? And I'll be honest with you, like I ran my 36,000 square foot greenhouse and 20 acres of garden, and I have zero college. I have the school of hard knocks. Oh, and we have the same addiction. I have Tim Hortons as well. And so I took all of that and I applied it to what I was doing on my farm, and I grew my farm. And so how did you take those lessons in where you've been and apply it to starting a small business and growing it?
I think like it's little bits and pieces overall, right? It's one thing about this type of business in this industry is demanding labor wise, right? And if you either have that or you don't. And so for me, that's not the issue. For me, it's marketing's a big one. And I would say that a lot of my experience working in the industry doing sales has helped that in a way. I recognize that branding is very important, and has helped with my success in this business for sure. People come to the market and are looking for my brand specifically over other people's products there. So between that, definitely my knowledge of soil and how it works and organic matter and nutrient cycles, things like that, and composting and how tillage affects soil structure, all those things really play a big role into how I manage my rotations, everything, right? Selecting which, kind of how to rotate my crops around, how much compost, which crops I should compost in front of if I don't have enough. Because I make my own compost too, and I don't quite produce enough volume to really put heavy amounts out there every year, but that continues to grow. So, I mean, water management, things like that comes from my experience in the industry. Being able to select varieties and understanding what traits you want out of a crop based on what your end result is or what end result you would like, different things like that. Being able to put three different varieties side by side and look at them and compare, I think, just understanding what to look for and things like that definitely comes from my experience in the industry with more conventional growing. So
Hey friends, on Dawn's Dirt, we get real about growing food, farming, homesteading, living free, and digging into the stuff that actually matters. If you're loving the dirt we're dishing out, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow on your favorite social media platforms. That's how we keep growing this community of badass, soil-covered, chicken-loving, freedom-chasing humans. Like and subscribe to me on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. Come be part of the movement. So you've done a lot of trial and error in the 3 years that you've been doing this. So can you tell us a little bit about the nitty gritties of that? So the year one was not a complete fail, but the learning curve was straight up and over sideways a little bit. And so, so what changes did you make year one to two, and specific changes like with your carrots? You said your carrots didn't work. So why didn't they work? And then what change did you make for the next year?
So carrots are a great example because in year one, they were probably one of my bottom crops. Of the crops that I did sell and did make some money on, they were probably at the bottom for total income. Whereas in
Why?
25, they were my highest grossing crop. And what
Okay.
what I discovered with carrots, first thing in year one, I had carrot sawfly came in. And so the maggots, or I forget the right terms, but the
Okay.
pupae in the soil, that form would chew on the roots and essentially cause damage. And in year one, I had I would say about 90% of my carrots had 30% damage to them. So significant and hard to sell. I really had to cut hard and get rid of lots. Couldn't sell them. But then year two, through the winter, I read that planting allium crops or allium plants along with your carrots deter the sawflies. So I interplanted my garlic and carrots and some garlic and onions, and that worked because in year two I had maybe 20% of my carrots had like 10% damage. So significant reduction in damage. And in year three, I did the same thing again, but I didn't interplant. I just did like a bed of garlic, then a bed of carrots, a bed of garlic, a bed of carrots, and that worked great. Year three, which this past season, I had maybe 5% of my carrots had 5% damage, like almost none from the carrot
That's
sawflies.
amazing.
Yeah, it was great. The other successes with carrots was getting a good seeder. I invested and bought a Jang seeder, and that thing being able to meter out one carrot seed every half inch or whatever spacing you desire. And it works. It works. It's not perfect, but it worked well enough that I didn't need to thin, had nice, even sized carrots, didn't have any issues with quality or size that way because the seeding rate was right. And then weed control is another huge one with carrots, and staying on top of the weeds early in the season till the carrots got big enough to kind of fill in the rows, and then they were able to compete. So spend a lot of time pulling a lot of weeds. So last season got a little better because I did a little bit of flame weeding prior to emergence, so that helped a lot. I have more ideas on how to utilize that more going forward as well. But also then in 25, so year one I made like nothing on carrots, and in 25, my third year I did it was about 25% of my gross was just my carrot crop. And huge ones with that was succession planting, planting carrots every week essentially and having continual harvest right into the fall. And then one big thing was I also was, I think, undervaluing. I raised the price on my carrots a little bit, and the market didn't have any concerns with it. And I think rightly so, because the product they're getting at that price is still as good a value or better than what they're going to get at the grocery store. At least I believe that. The taste is superior, like the quality, the freshness, everything about them, right? And the first 2 weeks that I delivered carrots, nobody had carrots for, I think, 4 weeks, until 4 weeks after I started delivering carrots. And my carrots would sell out in a day and a half from delivery. Like I'd deliver 100 pounds on Wednesday, they'd be sold out by noon on Thursday. Just disappeared. So I discovered I'm doing something right with them. One other thing that I did that really, I think, pushed our season here with carrot production in 25 was, I think it was July 27th, I planted carrots and I harvested them. I think it was about October 10th or something like that. I did just as a trial to see, but I was able to pull off a decent yield with nice sized carrots, essentially like a baby carrot, but still in a good size. Great taste because the frost had come and touched the tops a bit and pushed the sugars into the roots, so they were so sweet. And those things didn't last half a day at the market. I didn't have much, like 30 pounds, but they just disappeared. So it,
For
yeah.
sure. I love that. So you went from a quarter acre, and what size are you planning this year?
So in 25, I was still a quarter acre. I just got better. I didn't have as much in my first year as a quarter acre, but I had about 30 to 40% that whether it was planted or not, it didn't provide me any income or any real production. It was more learning from planting crops that didn't succeed. Similar story in 24, just not as much. I maybe only had 10% of that quarter acre that didn't produce any income or any real production. And then in 25, I think out of 40 beds I had in 25, I only had two that didn't really give me any production. They were, again, they were actually beets. And I don't know if it was seed quality. I didn't get good emergence. So I just kind of left them because I got busy in the season. But for 26, I'm planning to add another 10 beds, which will put me up to about 0.33 of an acre. So not a significant increase, but it should provide a lot of extra production just the way that I have it planned out. I won't have some beds, you know, being wasted on some crops that didn't sell or things like that, right? I understand what my market can take, and I'm growing what sells. I still want to try other crops, but I really only have four main crops, and that's what sells. That's what brings in the income for me. That's what I've gotten really good at producing and have good processes to be efficient in harvesting and provide time to try other things too, right? So,
And which four crops are they?
so carrots, uh, beets are kind of there. It's kind of a toss up between beets and peas, but yellow beans and green beans as well. So I guess it's hard. I kind of combine the beans. So it's beets, peas, carrots, and beans. Um, but like green beans, them as well are huge. They were between green beans or beans as a whole and carrots were 50% of my income for 25. I picked over 1,000 pounds of green beans by myself in 25, and it was enough. I was tired by the end, but pretty much everything sold. I don't think I had 5% waste on my harvest numbers compared to what my market numbers were. So
That's amazing. And you know what I really appreciate about that business model is that you're doing what works and you're doing what sells. I used to have customers and they'd say, "Why aren't you planting those?" Or people say, "Oh, plant the purple carrots," or, plant this or plant that. And I'm like, no, I've tried. I did it. Like I did it for, 16 years and I tried purple carrots and they were a novelty item. They sold once or twice and then people went back to the orange carrots, right? Eventually, I actually stopped growing carrots because I didn't have on the scale I didn't have it was very intensive in labor
yeah,
and I was hiring people to do the labor for me. So it just didn't pencil out. So I did the things that did work. And so yeah, that's so important for people to hear is that you're doing what works, you're doing what sells, you're doing not what you think should sell, but what actually sells and makes you some money. And yeah, like that's a fantastic business plan and to keep doing it and keep tweaking it and keep making the changes. I think a problem that sometimes people have is they get into the ideologies of things and they say, "Oh, you should be doing this or you should be doing that." And they're trying to tell the market what the market wants, but the market's going to tell you what the market wants, right? So that's amazing to hear. So let's get back to the actual so when you talk about the bed system, like can you tell me did you use plastic? What is a bed system? Can you explain all that to me?
for sure. So after my first year, I just kind of, I'll make a bed 5 feet wide for corn. I'll make it 3 feet wide for beans, and I'll put 3 rows and whatever. I just kind of figured it out, kind of how I did it in my garden, right? Which was small. My garden was tiny, but after that year and started listening to some podcasts, found Growing for Market magazine, started doing some looking into this more and finding more resources. I came across that people are running 30-inch beds. And so I started thinking about it like that makes more sense. Everything's standard then. Then I can start to look at equipment because I had access to a tractor. And so what I actually ended up doing was the width in between the tractor wheels was, I think, 36 to 34 inches, somewhere in there. And I tilled up my whole plot and I just drove the tractor and made my beds like that. So where the tractor wheels went, that's my path, and then there would be a bed would be in between the wheel width, and it worked out perfectly. In 24, I used that. It worked great. It got everything kind of standardized, and so in 24, my beds were, about the 34 inches wide and 135 feet long. But I was at that length, I was close to the neighboring cropland, which is conventionally farmed with chemicals and stuff. And I have thoughts of maybe going and getting organic certification. So in 25, I cut that back to 100 feet, and it gave me the like 110% of the required distance from conventional farming to organic. The distance you need is a buffer. So I'm there if I want to go that route, but it's nice to that extra 35 feet when you're walking down a row and pulling stuff, picking stuff. It takes forever. It just seems so much longer compared to a 100-foot bed. And 100-foot bed is easier for calculations on how much water to pump, everything, like how much seed I need, um, doing yield forecasts, different things like that, right? So it's very standard that way. It works great, even drip tape, right? Because I run drip irrigation on everything, and the rolls come in 100-foot increments. So it only makes sense to be running 100-foot beds. Everything else seems to be geared to that. You're either buying, like if you're buying low tunnels or something like that, it's 50-foot or 100-foot lengths. So going to a standard 100-foot bed just made sense. It's the bed system. I don't know that you would want to do it any other way. Like, again, back to the carrot production and having it standardized, I built an undercutter for garlic to lift it, but then I started using on carrots and immediately cut my harvest time down by probably 60% because before it was you almost had to dig it by hand, and I don't know how some guys do it where they have no equipment to help with that. You're either much smaller scale or a lot of guys are like heavy compost, and really they're growing their carrots in a layer of compost, so the soil is very very soft and easy to pull carrots. But my ground is very high clay content, and if there's it's light and moisture around harvest time, that ground can be almost like cement. Not that it does produce, it does a great job producing, but you still have those challenges with root crops and soil structure and being able to harvest it. So having equipment really helps.
For sure. So when you say you had an undercutter, like we built for my skid steer, because we did the same thing. We had a tractor, and that was kind of the bed system. We did it. I had a bed layer, and so it laid the plastic perfectly. And actually, where I didn't lay plastic for carrots and lettuces and things like that, we actually ran the bed layer over top anyway, which built a bed. And so we
Oh yeah.
planted everything in the bed system. But for the undercutter, we had the neighbor, and he just built this it was like a U-shaped bar, and it just went right underneath. We put it on the front of the skid steer, and we just pushed it underneath, and we pushed underneath it, and we pulled all the carrots up that way. So, like, what's what's yours like?
Mine, I built it myself. I basically went online and saw some different examples and thought about actually buying one and ordering one rather than building. But by the time I would have had it shipped, it would have been like 2 grand, and I just didn't really want to spend. So I ended up going to a local shop. They basically cut all the steel to length that I needed and made a kind of a sharpened edge for the cutting points, and I just welded it all up together and made it set up so it fit the 3-point hitch on the back of the tractor, and off I went. So I ended up being about $600 for that with steel and not counting my labor. So way better price, and it it made harvest a breeze for garlic and carrots last year. I don't think I could have harvested what I did without that tool. Not one bit.
When you're a farmer, when you're a small scale farmer, you're going to make changes exactly like you did. You're going to do the research, you're going to find it, and then you're going to farmerize it. I took a on my I had a pig barn and I ripped half the roof off and I made it like a passive solar greenhouse, and I called it my hippie house because I just used what I had on the farm and made a greenhouse, and I grew thousands of heads of lettuce through that thing. And so I just saw what the big guys do and what the big players do, and then I farmerized it. And even at my size, I farmerized things. I figured it out. The neighbor welded up my digger, same thing. And so that's totally what farmers and small scale farmers need to do, is they need to think outside of the box and think, how can I do this for cheaper? How can I make this work? How can I do it for myself? Back to the bed system. Like, do you use plastic on your beds?
I
No, for
used
beets you wouldn't, carrots you wouldn't, beans. Did you use it?
no plastic at all. Everything, all my weed control is hand picking or hose, tools, however, right? I did in my second year,
Okay.
I took a bicycle and built my own wheel hoe out of it. So that cost me like $20, literally. It was essentially the cost of the hoe because I got the bike for free and just kind of chopped it up and made it. And I still use that tool. It works great. So rather than spending $700 on one online and having it shipped to me for another $100, I'm at a way better cost and still using that tool. I haven't upgraded and probably won't. I might make another version, but it's not everybody has that luxury, right? Like I listened to a few other podcasts of people specifically market gardening and they're bootstrapping it, and part of it, I think, is they don't have the access to the tools or maybe the know-how to build things on their own as well, right? Growing up on the farm, I mean, you're around it. You build things yourself to make the job easier. So, another thing that I built that initially I built it for picking beans. I took two bicycles and welded them together upright and put a bench on there to lay down and pick beans and just roll ahead. And it worked pretty good. I don't use it. I still use it. It's a great tool on my farm, but I don't use it for beans anymore. But I use it to plant all my garlic. I use it to do all my transplanting. I use it to pick my beets. I use it to weed carrots. I use it to do a lot of weeding, pick radishes, different things like that. So it is a great tool. I probably want to refine it and make it better yet, but that's maybe another year. I got other things that need to be built as well. So
Are you sitting on a farm or homestead that could be making you real money? Tired of guessing on how to market your products? I owned a 36,000 square foot greenhouse. I ran 2 farm to table stores. I had 30 people on payroll. I brought in $2.5 million in gross revenue in 2020, selling farm goods directly to customers. Now I teach farmers and homesteaders how to make money and save money off the land they already have. Whether you're selling eggs, beef, produce, baked goods, or anything in between, if you want to get into direct marketing and grow your sales, I'm the girl for you. Stop leaving money on the table and start putting it into your bank account. Join me at Dawn's Dirt Business Coaching and let's make your farm pay you back. That's brilliant. Like saving time is saving money, right? The faster you can pick things, the faster you can produce things. And I think that's important for the listeners to hear as well, is that you're just one dude doing all this on your own. Do you have staff at all to help you?
I have no help. I mean, my kids, the odd time I'll make them come help things. Like in the fall, they came and helped pick cucumbers because we got a frost and all the cucumbers needed to come off the plants. So little things like that, but I don't really make them work in the garden. And the odd time, like my boss's son would come out and rototill. I've got a bare patch that is kind of for expansion, and he'd come out and rototill the odd time through the summer for me for like a couple hours. But aside from that, pretty much all the harvest is just me, and all the planting, all the weed control, everything, right? So it's very important to have processes in place and things like that. A good example of that, like I was picking beans, I would pick them two picks, like one pick and leave the bush and come back for the second one. I don't do that anymore. I plant the beans. wait till they're filled up really good. Maybe some of the bottom ones are getting a bit too stringy, too big, but the young ones aren't quite there. Doesn't matter. I go in, I pull the plant, pick, toss the bush, and keep moving down the row. But that put me from, picking maybe up to 20 pounds an hour to picking 30 pounds an hour, no problem. And I'm getting the yields off of a bed that I need. I can plan my succession planting. So now it's pretty much plant one bed of beans per week, harvest one bed per week. I pretty much always have 100 pounds to go to the market every week. It's really easy to forecast. It works so well that it it reduces my labor needs. If all of a sudden I'm doing double picking and having to bend over even just to do that, is when you're not pulling the bush, you're bent over the whole time to pick. Whereas when I'm pulling the bush out, I can bend down, pull the bush, stand up straight again, pick the beans off, and I'm not bent over that whole time. So, if you think about just being in the position of bent over and harvesting, that reduced that by probably 80% just by doing a one pick and done with my beans. Whereas I hear lots of people complain that they don't grow beans because of the labor. And yet for me, it's one of my top crops. It makes me 25% of my income just off that one crop. And the labor isn't even that bad for it either because I found a process that works. So,
For sure. I had the same thing. Beans was one of my crops. I quit growing carrots, but beans was one of my crops. It's shorter to tell you what I didn't grow. I didn't grow garlic. It just never really worked for me. I didn't grow peas. For whatever reason, peas just did not work. I didn't grow asparagus because that's a long crop and I just didn't grow it. But that's almost, I didn't grow pickling cucumbers for whatever reason. They wouldn't work either for me. But I grew everything else in the bed system, and I grew what worked, right? And what sold, and I bunched it all, and I went to farmers markets and sat there and slugged my vegetables out that way, and it worked really well. Like, yeah, I miss those days. I miss my farm. I miss I miss what I was doing. But I loved it.
it's
I loved it. Have you ever seen pictures of did you ever see pictures of my old farm?
a couple I've seen on through, I think, Facebook. I've seen a few of them. It looked pretty wild, like huge. So
Yeah,
I don't.
it was. I I loved it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I can't imagine dude being that size. Like I don't have any intentions to get that big. I think it'd be cool if I got up to an acre. I have a half acre plot, and that's my goal, is to get to there. Hopefully be able to manage it where that's my primary income. Because right now, or all through all of this, I've been maintaining another full-time job as well. I haul oil just outside of town here. So that, mind you, that's week on, week off. So it does give me some time to work on this. But in the season when harvest is there, it's challenging. I go jump in the truck, drive for 10, 12 hours, and then come to the garden and pick for a couple hours and try to get stuff bagged up and get delivered to the market in the morning and then back in the truck again for the day. So it's been tough, but it's been manageable. One thing though with that I recognize is, so for 26 I'm planning to hire somebody just to do my bagging because it's typically evenings. By the end of the day, I'm tired from harvest. I think it'll be easier to just bring somebody in. They can come right to my facility where I do all my bagging, and 2 hours in the evening for just Monday through Friday. Get what you can get done and go home. And the cost wise, like for me, that labor is what it'll save me on being fatigued or burnt out, or it I think it'll work out. It'll be better. It'll provide me more opportunity to rest and focus on what needs to happen in the field. So
For sure. And I actually interviewed a guy from the States, and he said he doesn't mind hiring for bagging because you already have the product. You know that you're going to get the money in for that product. So it makes sense to hire for that. But when you're hiring for seeding or weeding or things like that, at that point in the crop, you don't know, because that's what people don't understand is you're a high roller gambler. And even at what you're doing, if you get a hailstorm, if you get drought, if you get all these things, you can control what you can control, and some things do come back. But like I used to say, I did a reel on my social media here, and I said, we're not the same, because I put $500,000 worth of crop in the ground, and I pray that we don't get a hailstorm. And so yeah, it's people don't realize, and the intensity too. People would say, oh, do you have crop insurance? And I'm like, nope, I don't get crop insurance, because how do you do crop insurance on 3 beds of cabbage and 3 beds of a half an acre of corn? Like, it just doesn't work. It would be so expensive, and it just doesn't work. That you're a high roller gambler, and you're using your time and the seed and all the things.
Absolutely. I mean, nothing scares me more than hail because I'll lose half my crop, right? The root crops, maybe you'll salvage, but the rest of them, they're likely going to be done. And there's no insurance on that. I have nothing to back me up. The only, I guess, thing that you'll get out of that is you'll have some fertilizer for following crops. But aside from that, you did all that work up until July, maybe a week away from harvest, and you lose that harvest, right? That's huge. That's so I 100% agree with that. Like with the fellow you interviewed about where to place the labor, and I've had people help with harvest, and I find that they don't maybe have the speed or understand the process of picking and maybe doing some of your thinning on quality right in the field, things like that. So the quality of product coming to the packing room is maybe needs a heavier sort after that. And I think it's easier if because I know I can manage the harvest as it is right now, the amount that I'm doing and the amount I'm expanding to. It's also more challenging when I have to provide transportation to somebody out there, or I'm not necessarily in the field at a standard, like I'm out there 6 till noon every day. It could be at 6 p.m. one day. It could be, so trying to find help that way as well, where it's inconsistent times is more challenging. I just figured hire somebody to pack. They can be there from 6 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday to Friday. Super simple. They don't need to have transportation. If they live in town, they can walk over and be there, right? So really a lot just simpler to manage it, right?
For sure. And the part that I'd like my listeners to hear about this is you're working a full-time job. So you're working, 10 or 12 hours a day, and then you're still farming on top of it. And so that's what people need to understand is farmers have grit. Farmers have grind. Farmers work crazy, crazy hours, and they do what they need to do when they need to do it. So you can't just say, oh, I worked a 10-hour day and the beans ain't picking, but let's just wait a week. That doesn't work. You have to pick them when you have to pick them. And the work has to get done. And I think that's the part that people sometimes don't understand is, you know, you work hard. And I used to say, like, I was working like 80, 90 hours a week. Now, I personally wasn't in the field doing the work. I hired people for that. But I was going to farmers markets 6 days a week or 7 days a week to sell my stuff. And that's a lot of work as well. Taking the bins, setting up your whole setup, selling to customers, taking it all down, doing all the driving, loading the vehicles, all of that is really a lot of work as well. And so people don't realize just how hard people work. And I'll be honest with you, that portion of it is highly, highly impressive to me, that you would work a full-time job and not just go home and watch TV. No, no, no. You're starting a business, and that's impressive, sir.
Well, it's challenging, but it's also different. Like when I'm in the field and I'm picking, and yeah, it's laborious. It's not intensive. It can be depending on how you approach it, right? But the processes I've kind of developed for myself in harvesting have made it where it's still labor, it's still work, but it's not hard. but it's just you're out there for me to pick a whole bed of beans is maybe 3 hours, maybe 4 hours, right? And you're out there standing there for 4 hours picking beans, but it's not super hard. It's long and you're on your feet the whole time. But doing that, I enjoy it. I, for me, that is not as hard of work as, say, how you're saying going to the market and standing there and talking to people all day. That can be just as energy consuming as working in the field, if not more sometimes, because you're thinking about what you're doing more, you're interacting with people, which can affect, how much effort you're putting into it. Labor jobs aren't always necessarily the hardest jobs either on the farm. So it's just something there's maybe a challenge in every part of the business that you do. And I suppose it depends which part of it you like the most, but yeah.
For me, actually, the part that I miss the most, and so may I ask, are you more an introverted person than an extroverted person?
Definitely, yeah, yeah. Which is weird
Yeah.
because I mean I did sales with Chem and Fert for 10 years, but in that example, I think, it took a little bit, but after a while I had pretty consistent business because I developed a relationship. So I think a similar thing is happening here with how I'm marketing this, but I'm really not in front of my customers because of the way that I market my produce. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I'll be honest with you, I'm an extreme extrovert. If you put me by myself too long, I get a little bit sad, but if you put me in front of people, man, that fills my cup all day long. So we work to our strengths, right? And I appreciate how you've done that with your business. I did the same thing with mine. I had the farm going, and then I went and did what I was really good at, which was the people, the relationships. When I announced that I had to sell my farm, my customers were crying. I was crying. My customers, everybody's crying because, and hugging people and loving on people. Like that's the part that I actually miss the most about my farm. And you've done the same thing. You've worked to your strengths, which is just get in there and grunt out the work and do what you need to do. And you've hired the sales side, or not hired it out, but you've figured out the sales side, which is maybe your weakness. And I'm not saying it's a weakness. It's just we all have strengths and weaknesses, and I think that's brilliant. It's brilliant business on your part, sir. That's just my unsolicited opinion.
well, so the sales side, like I have to pay a percentage of however I price, a percentage of that sales goes to the market. But I don't have to have a point of sale system. I don't have to have a staff. I'm not there on Saturdays. That's one thing. Like in the aside from the odd Saturday, like maybe I had to go out and catch up on something or water because it's been really hot and dry, or but I essentially don't work weekends on my farm. So it's something I basically said I'm just not doing it. If I can't do it through the week, like okay to run out there for an hour and maybe catch up on one little thing, but I'm not going out there for a Saturday to spend 6 hours weeding or something like that. And for the most part, I stayed true to that. Um, but it's good because you need time to rest. You need time to relax and be ready to move on with the next task. But back to the market, like if I had to be at farmers markets and selling directly, I don't know if I would be as successful as I am. Having that market the way it's set up and supporting my business that way, yeah, it comes at a cost, and it's not. Some people might have some sticker shock, but I don't know that I could pay somebody to do as good of a job and to promote my brand as well through it, right? So it's I think it's totally worth it how I have my market. But I recognize I am only at that one market and I am kind of maxing out. I've through 25, I've recognized that about the maximum amount of beans I can push through there in a week is 150, and then sales start to drop off. So I need to find other market avenues. And so this winter I built a website. I've got an account set up with Open Food Network, which kind of facilitates online sales. And I'm planning to offer, because with the market, it's limited hours, it's mostly weekdays. There's a certain percentage of people, and in my generation too, that they're working full time, both parents, both people in the house. They can't make it there before the market closes at 5. They maybe still want access to this type of vegetables, this quality, but they can't get it because they're busy working. So I've decided to try to go and like start doing online sales, kind of hopefully create a whole new market stream for myself and kind of tap into that market. Plus, everybody's going online. So it, like, everybody is buying everything online now, it seems. So why shouldn't I be there as well, right? It's it's hard. I don't know what to expect. It's all new to me, but it's something I'm trying out for this year. So I'm really excited about that.
For sure. I love it. That's a great idea. And it's truthful, when you've got people working 9 to 5 and your store is open 9 to 5, like that's a bit of a conflict. And so, yes, to be able to reach more people, that's brilliant to go online. I'll tell you about a couple things that I did when I had my farm. So I did online sales, and so we did a veggie box, and so we would deliver around Calgary, and the minimum order, there was always a minimum order, and um, I would actually hire someone or go and do the deliveries myself around house to house. The other thing I did was actually I took and I enlisted people to help me. And so I said, "Okay, Susie, if you can sell 10 boxes of vegetables at $25 per week for X amount of weeks, then your veggie box is free." And so I counted that kind of like a commission, right? And so then I took people, my customers, and I turned them into my salespeople, and it worked really, really, really well. And I got all that through social media. Social media is the best form of advertising ever. It tells the story, it connects the farmer you to your product, to your customer, and that's how I did it for many, many years.
I think that, I mean, if there's one takeaway for me from this podcast, that's it right there. Something I never would have thought of, but I might just have to try that. I'm scared of the delivery thing. I think, like, I've done logistics in the past, in previous jobs, and it can be challenging on best days. So I'm not even interested in delivery as an option because people won't be there, and then you got to go. Like, I just don't have the time. It'd be different if I had staff in the field harvesting and I had the time to run around, but I just don't have that. And until I can get my business to that stage, but I'm gonna offer pickup times. So I figure Monday nights I'll just be at home bagging carrots anyways. So what's what's the big deal? Have people popping in to pick up their stuff between a 2 hour window, right? It's super easy to manage that way. They can go online. You can even go online today and pre-order garlic. So it's super simple. At least for me, that's going to be. But I really like your idea of, I should almost have a referral program for the online. If you refer somebody, you get a free bag of peas or something, right? Like, for every referral, just something to incentivize people to share with
For
their
sure.
friends.
Yeah. Well, and what I did as well was when you wanted the delivery service, there was an extra fee for that. And so there was so much per box or so much per drop or whatever. And so that actually covered off the driver and the fuel and things like that to go around and do the deliveries. It really worked well during COVID.
Yeah.
I kind of picked that up on a whim. And that's business, right? You see a need and you fill the need. And so I was delivering copious amounts of food boxes during COVID when people were afraid to go out. Yeah, I honestly, I capitalized on that very well during 2020, and people would come to me and we'd have pickup points or we did delivery or all the things. Like, it just worked really well for me during COVID. And after that, it kind of dropped off a bit, but yeah, worked really well. For
Yeah.
sure. I want to go back to the whole organic thing. I wanted to ask you, why do you want to certify organic? Because I have some thoughts and opinions if you wanted them. But what's your thought process on that, sir?
I mean, The only real reason why I would maybe get certified organic is because there's potential to extract more profit, I guess, or margin out of my product by increasing my price. But the some of the things I personally, because I've worked with organic growers in a convention, like selling through a business where I'm selling pesticides and fertilizers, and I have organic producers coming in and just understanding how the process of organic certification works in this country. I think it's a bit more set up. I don't believe it's there to truly embrace organic production. It's set up in a way that's more to have bureaucracy and additional costs in however you want to put it. But when there's different, it's I, I guess it's hard to. I don't know if I need to get into that detail, but I just don't see that it's really going to provide, based on my customer base, if all of a sudden I'm throwing an organic certification on my label and upping my price by 30%. I almost feel like it might hurt my business. I don't think I'm going to lose a certain percentage of customers just because all of a sudden it's going to be out of their price range. I think, and I'm trying to brand myself. I know in the States they have, in some states it's called certified naturally grown, so it's kind of a step down from organic. And there, to me, is another scam in a sense. Like, we're putting way too many labels on our food, and I like the term naturally grown. I'm using that because I'm not using any fertilizer, no chemicals. It's just compost, companion planting, and crop rotation, you know. And that to me is, how much better do you need it to be? Do you need me keeping records like I'm and sharing with the government on what I'm doing on my farm? Maybe that's a good thing. But there's probably better places where there should be more government involvement in how our food is produced rather than right on the farm gate. It, I just, I'm leaning more off of my customers and how even though I don't have huge interaction with them, I interact with a few, and just the feeling that I get is they don't care about organic. They really don't. They recognize local, naturally grown production, and to them that's great value, right? And they can go in and pick up a pound of my green beans for $6, and in Walmart it's $5.50 for a pound of beans. And those beans were mechanically harvested, have damage to the beans, were probably conventionally grown, have were sprayed with chemicals. Who knows? Pre-harvest interval 2 weeks on that
And they're
product,
2 weeks
really,
old.
right? Like, it just, I think what I'm doing is
Yeah.
right, and I've been working on my brand and trying to make it that way, where it's like I could go organic, but I choose not to. But I'm doing everything as though I was organic, right? And now I'm confident in being able to say this is naturally grown nutrition. And it's as simple as that. So you can rely on it being that way.
I actually couldn't agree with more with what you said. And so when I had my farm, people would always come up and they'd say, "Or are you organic?" And I'd say, "No, but let me tell you what I do." And the reason I wasn't organic is because I had a hydroponic greenhouse. So I had wastewater with fertilizer in it. I put that into a pond, and then I put that water, that wastewater, onto my field crops. And so I use fertilizer, but then I said I grow without pesticide unless certified organic product was used. So they were always kind of little like, "Oh, you sprayed your cabbages?" Yep, I sprayed my cabbages, but it was an organic spray, not a regular spray. I was just really honest and authentic with what I did, educational with what I did on my farm. And honestly, out of 100 people, I would maybe have one person that really wanted certified organic produce, and the rest didn't really care. They wanted to know me, my farming methods, how I did things, the relationship, the community, the local, the quality. My tomatoes versus anything you get anywhere else. My tomatoes tasted like tomatoes, not like cardboard, right? And so I really think you're on the right track there. Is that I think it's the bureaucracies in some of these labeling that just cause it makes the price go up because the cost goes up. And really, are you getting a better product? I don't think so. I think you're getting the same naturally grown produce that you would if you were getting certified organic produce. I think you're definitely on the right track there, sir.
I like I said, I think it's the best value you're going to find for produce. You're not paying organic prices, you're paying kind of in between, but you're also getting something that essentially is organic, as good as organic, if not better. And like the one thing in organics that bothered me is that there are still products you can buy that are not just simply extracted. They've gone through a process, been refined, but yet they're registered for organic use to spray to deal with pests or whatever. And the science may back that it's organic, but you're still allowing in a system that we essentially are trying to promote organic as we have not used any products. It's just grown naturally the way it should, yet it isn't happening that way. But people, the average person sees organic and thinks that that's how it is, but that's not actually how it is. And that's where, like, food labeling, but that's a whole can of worms we can open up about food labeling. I To me, I think the only opportunity that I might see is if I'm able to mechanize more, scale up, fivefold from where I'm at, and do a much larger production where I could get into some of the local supermarkets with organic and be at that market. I see opportunity there, but it would take a lot more mechanization to supply those volumes to the markets, right? And maybe one day, but to do it just conventionally, I don't know if it's worth it either. I don't know, to scale up and you'd extract a lot more value being priced organically. Like, organic garlic in the supermarket's $23 a pound versus where I'm selling at $16 a pound. So there's opportunity with it, but is it worth it to now way heavier record keeping? Somebody coming out visiting your farm, or one summer you pulled your water sample at the wrong time and pesticide showed up, and all of a sudden you lose your certification for the year, or you can't use your water source all of a sudden for half a season because so it's I don't know that it's worth it really, at least not for me at this point.
For For sure, and I can tell you from experience, like I started in the greenhouse industry when I was 5 years old, and a price for a dozen cucumbers, and it wasn't organic, never mind the certification, but I can just tell you from this experience, a dozen cucumbers when my parents were growing they quit growing in 2006 was $7 per dozen for 12 cucumbers to the warehouse. The warehouse would sell them to the grocery store to customer. Then we were doing wholesale, but we built our greenhouse and it was big and, it was expensive and it was still $7 a dozen for cucumbers. And then we were selling direct to grocery store and they were $12 a dozen, which made sense. But then we needed to get Canada Gap certification. And that was going to cost $7,000 to sell $30,000 worth of produce through the grocery store. And it didn't tick tactician or pencil out for us. So we pulled out of grocery stores and that's how we ended up fully growing and selling direct to consumer, because then we're getting $24 plus for a dozen long English cucumbers. And so, when you look at the grocery system, it's the middle guys that are making the money, which is why I pulled out, and it's why I made my farm last as long as it did. So here's the question I'd like for the final question. If we have a listener that's listening and they want to get into it year one, ground one, square one, doing what you did from square one, what's the biggest piece of advice you would give them?
Ooh, I mean, that's tough not knowing their starting point. Like, I started and I didn't even have I started all with debt. Like, I had to borrow, I save up, do your research. The biggest thing I would say, like, it depends on your background. If you feel more confident in the marketing, then focus on what you need in the field. If you feel confident in the field because you've been gardening, then focus on the market. But I think that the two big things for me that really determine my success is learning my market and learning how to produce to fulfill the needs of that market. So succession planting plays a huge role in my success. Figuring out which varieties and what sells and cutting out, like my first year growing 20 different things to now I have five-ish primary crops and three or four other little ones that I'm always playing with. Don't, yeah, and don't be afraid to start small, stay at your job where it's safe and start on the side as a hobby and just try it out and learn. If you can get a small enough plot you can manage kind of as a garden and just sell a little bit here and there to really discover what people want and how you can do it in figuring your processes out and things like that. But one other thing, and I hear it a lot on other podcasts, is go work for somebody for a year as well. Like you get paid to learn in that sense, right? You're out there, you're working, they're paying you, you have opportunity to ask all kinds of questions, you know, see how it's done. So there might be an opportunity on my farm in 27 for that for somebody if they're out there listening, but not quite there yet for 26. But I would say just sit back and think about it. Don't be afraid to jump right in though either and start getting your hands dirty, but take the time and plan how you're going to do it. I didn't plan in my first year, and at the end of my first year I felt like, okay, I'm going to try it again, but man, that seems like I did a lot of work for nothing, and I probably could have done a lot better had I had the time to plan it out. But I still learned. I stepped forward and applied, and it's working out for me. So,
For sure. I just like to actually add a little plug for myself in here. As I've heard you speak, sir, I just think, man, had we met however many years ago, I could have been your garden coach, and I could have helped you save some of those, thoughts and ideas, and come together with you and got you a bit more success. So I would say hire a garden coach there or a business coach like myself. Yeah, that's just my little selfish plug there.
absolutely. No, I don't disagree with that. Like, don't be afraid to lean on people. Even kind of running a business is new to me, but not it is in the sense that it's my own business. And although my employer it's totally different industry, I still lean on him for certain things, like just to pick his brain because I've seen somebody who's been successful at what they do in the business that they do, and how did you get there? And so it's just because it's not the same industry, just being able to recognize, hey, that person's doing something right in how they're managing their business. Maybe I can learn something from them. But I think, as a whole, we all can learn something from each other. So just not being afraid to ask and share what you know and ask to learn. So
Absolutely. And that's how I learned actually. Like I was raised in the greenhouse industry, but then I started with 1 acre of garden, and my ex-husband at that point, he was talking to his mom, and she looked out the window and she said, what are you gonna do if that 1 acre doesn't work? And he said to his mother at that point, he said, what's she gonna do next year if it does work? And we went from 1 acre to 3 acres to 6 acres to 10 acres to 20 acres, right? And so we just bit off more and more and more and more and more. And so, but I had people in the industry, both in the greenhouse industry and in the garden industry, that had helped me and taught me and helped me learn and helped me to get to where I was. And so, that's truly what it's about, is sharing and learning. And that's what this podcast is about, sharing and learning. So where can people find you?
you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on Instagram, and I just created a website. I just finished up here like a week ago. It is www.rubensroots.com. One thing, when I created my name, I should have maybe changed the spelling because most people spell Reuben with just Ruben, but mine is spelled Reuben. So, But yeah, if you go to, can probably Google the website and find it. Shouldn't be too hard to find me on Facebook or Instagram. And feel free to reach out.
Ruben's Roots. Okay, go check him out. Go give him a like and a follow. Give him some love. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what 2026 does for you, sir. So thank you so much for taking time and being on the show. Really appreciate this. And yeah, I wish you nothing but the best in the years to come.
Thank you, Don. Thanks for giving me this opportunity as well.
For sure. Takes a village.